RTV Virgilio. Adesso su canale 819 Sky.
Jesus is alive. Jesus is Alive Church International. For the anointing you have to pay a price, but it's free. Pastor in charge, Bishop Alfred Mensah Jr., General Overseer. Come and fellowship with us to end your blessing. When you come with sorrow, you will go home with joy. Our Sunday service is 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Friday prayer service is from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Venue, Yavel Discover #1, Brescia, Italy.
A Brescia, il ristorante bar Albergo Benedetta propone piatti di ottima qualità con un'ottima ristorazione. Lo staff del ristorante bar Albergo Benedetta è in grado di offrire con professionalità un servizio accogliente e dinamico per far diventare speciale ogni vostra occasione. Per informazioni o prenotazioni, chiama il numero 030 360 122. Venite a trovarci, diventeremo subito amici. Ristorante bar Albergo Benedetta, a Santa Eufemia a Brescia, in via Saleria 80. Ti aspettiamo!
I used to think that in Europe things would be different, like the human rights and the free society. It really makes me feel sad because I don't have any rights. I've lost so much time these 4 years, but I can't go back home. When I first came here, I had hope, but right now, I see everything dark when I dream about my future.
We first met Akhtar Azimi in Greece in 2009. Then, aged only 18, he had fled the violence of his native Afghanistan just months before. He was hopeful he would start a new life in Europe. But things did not turn out quite as he expected.
I used to say, oh, when I will get in Europe, what a beautiful life is it gonna be. Oh, salam.
Akhtar left Afghanistan after being threatened by the Taliban. Leaving his widowed mother and younger brothers, he came to Europe alone.
And now I feel like it's a wrong number. We have come to a wrong place.
Akhtar and some 1,600 Afghan boys and men found themselves living in squalor in this cardboard shanty town in Greece's western port city of Patras.
This is like living like animals.
Living amongst piles of rubbish and mud, the hundreds of residents had only 4 overflowing latrines and a few standpipes for washing. Akhtar never imagined he would live like this in Europe.
We can't wash our clothes properly. We can't wash ourselves. It's like living 5 people in one tent. It's smelling, everything is dirty. And I feel like nobody considers me a human being here in Greece.
Because of its position on the edge of Europe, Greece is the entry point not only for Afghans, but for hundreds of thousands of other migrants and refugees fleeing wars and poverty in other parts of Asia and Africa. They come by boat or any way they can. When it comes to migration, European law is clear. All asylum seekers must apply in the first country they come into. But getting approved in Greece was particularly difficult. At that time, the Greek authorities granted asylum to fewer people than any country in Europe, less than 1% compared to 45% in Spain and 19% in neighboring Italy.
Greece is a small country and we cannot afford in taking care of all these people.
Brigadier Kasoutis, then chief of the aliens police, was responsible for policing illegal migrants. He said Greece was being saddled with Europe's migration problem.
As a country, we cannot have all this burden of the migrants without the assistance of the other European Union member states.
Λοιπόν, νομίζω ότι η
The
κατάσταση στην
situation
οποία
in which
βρίσκονται
these
οι
refugees
άνθρωποι
find
εδώ, οι
themselves
πρόσφυγες
here,
εδώ, είναι
is tragic.
τραγική.
Christos Karapiperis from the Greek Red Cross had been helping the migrants in Patras for years.
Δεν μπορούν να
They
επιστρέψουν
cannot
πίσω
return to
στη
their
χώρα
countries.
τους. Δεν έχουν το
They don't have the
δικαίωμα.
right to do
Δεν έχουν το
so.
δικαίωμα να
They
προχωρήσουν
don't
προς
have the
την
right to
υπόλοιπη
continue their
Ευρώπη.
journey into the rest of Europe.
Και εδώ στην Ελλάδα
Here in Greece,
δεν τους
their
αναγνωρίζεται
rights are
κανένα
not
απολύτως δικαίωμα
recognized
και
and they're considered
είναι
illegal.
παράνομο.
Therefore,
Οπότε
they're
είναι
trapped in a
παγιδευμένοι σε
situation which
μια
has completely
απόλυτα
no way
αδιέξοδη
out.
κατάσταση.
Akhtar's long journey began when he was just 5 years old, when his father was killed during Afghanistan's conflict with the Soviet Union, forcing his mother and her children to flee to Pakistan. Akhtar spent his childhood in a refugee camp. More than a decade later, his family returned to this area of Kabul, Afghanistan's capital. But the Taliban insurgency was gaining ground, and Afghan citizens were increasingly caught in the crossfire. Scared for his life, Akhtar began a risky journey overland to Europe. Spanning 4,000 kilometers and using his entire family savings, he traveled first across Iran and then Turkey.
We crossed the border, even there was some firing on us. They used to say, you have to run because the police is chasing us. I was too much scared. I used to say, why did I come?
The final leg of the journey was the short sea crossing from western Turkey to the Greek island of Lesbos. Coast guards patrolled the seas on the lookout for overloaded rubber boats.
Here the weather prevents them, but here they will get off course a little bit and they go a little bit north.
They came like a rocket towards our boat. It hit our boat like 2 cars crash.
Their boat was punctured. Like these other migrants shown here, their boat started to sink.
And we were saying, help us, help us.
Akhtar and his group were finally plucked from the sea. He was then put in this detention center on Lesbos. But migrants like Akhtar could only legally stay in the country for 30 days unless they applied for asylum. If granted, they would be given refugee status, entitling them to assistance. But to get asylum, they had to prove persecution in their own countries. Some 3,000 asylum hopefuls used to line up for days on the pavement outside the Aliens Directorate in Athens. The doors opened just once a week, and only a small number of those waiting were ever admitted. Some of these men had been coming back each week for a year, just to try and get an interview date. Desperate, Akhtar saw his only option was to somehow get out of Greece and try to get asylum in another European country. One way out was to smuggle himself onto the ferries which leave Patras daily, headed for Italy. And these trucks boarding the ferries seemed to be his best chance.
We wait for the driver to go somewhere. And we try underneath the truck, in between the wheels. That's more dangerous. This is the one tire and this is the other tire. We keep sleeping underneath it. There are some wires we keep catching like this off the wires and keep quiet.
One wrong move and boys had been crushed to death as one of the rear wheels was lifted. Each day, in broad daylight, dozens of boys swarmed after these vehicles as they approached the ferry port. Accidents were frequent. One boy was caught between two lorries and almost killed the day before we filmed here. Akhtar and the many other desperate migrants were caught in a limbo land of illegality, unable to stay in Greece and unable to leave.
You have chances if you get out of here, but if you're here, you don't have any chance. Whenever the ship leaves, I look at the ship and say, if I was there, inside that ship.
Akhtar did eventually make it out, but not on one of those ships. After several months of trying, he finally found another route. Risking border guards and scrounging and borrowing what money he could from friends for a train ticket, he headed north, embarking on what would be a treacherous 3-year journey across Europe in search of a country that would welcome him. With 2 friends, they traveled across Greece and north into Macedonia, through Macedonia to Serbia, then from Serbia across the border to Hungary.
Then we went to the authorities and claimed for asylum. We all wanted to stay in Hungary because we just wanted to stay somewhere.
But Akhtar was about to come face to face with that European immigration law stipulating that asylum applications can only be processed in the first country the migrant entered, which in his case was Greece. While his asylum application was processed, he was once again put in a detention center.
It was locked. Of course, we couldn't go out.
Several weeks later, Akhtar received the news that his application had been turned down. Fearing that he would be sent back to Greece, he fled.
Once we were sent to a medical check outside and we didn't come back. We just went to Budapest and took a train to Austria. We decided to apply for asylum in Vienna.
A glimmer of hope. They'd heard that Austria didn't send asylum seekers back to Greece due to the escalating economic crisis there and the growing unrest on the streets. Akhter settled in and found himself a job, determined to pay back the money he had borrowed from friends to pay for his journey.
When I was in Austria, I worked for a few months as a translator with the doctor. Since in that camp there were a lot of Afghans and some Iranians, some Indians, some Pakistanis, and that way I earned some money.
After 6 months of waiting, Akhter heard back from the Austrian authorities.
The answer was the same, that they would send us back to Greece.
Yet again, he was forced to flee.
And instead of putting barriers, states should be concerned at facilitating this migration.
Francois Crépeau, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the rights of migrants, says that with 15 million migrants on the move globally, their situation has to be addressed. One of the biggest challenges migrants face, he says, is being seen as terrorists.
Policies have been put in place which treat migrants as a security risk. Crossing the border has been criminalized in several countries, and it's also worrying because most migrants are not security risks.
Akhter believes he isn't either, but he had to set off again. Traveling through Italy and France, he headed for a place he'd heard was giving migrants a chance. A small, wealthy country in Northern Europe, Luxembourg. It was his last hope.
When I arrived here, I applied for asylum, and they immediately decided that they will not send us back to Greece, since the situation over there was worsening.
Hopeful that he may have finally found a place to call home, Akhter relaxed in the family environment of this shelter for migrants. He began to see a chance of making his future in Luxembourg.
I'm a person who believes in hard work and in really doing something. I can offer a lot to this country.
He set about mastering the language of Luxembourg and began French classes offered to immigrants.
S, parce que c'est féminin et c'est...
Moi, je fais la troisième. J'ai rangé ma maison.
Oui.
Je l'ai rangée.
Voilà, vous pouvez ranger les feuilles et puis je vous souhaite une bonne soirée, je vous vois demain.
C'est quelqu'un qui est très volontaire, qui apprend beaucoup et qui veut faire beaucoup de choses. Je pense qu'il mérite sa chance.
Qureshi Faisal is an immigration lawyer provided by the authorities to help Akhter in his struggle. He had to prove that Akhter's life is in danger in Afghanistan. And Faisal was hopeful after uncovering new evidence of the risks Akhter faced back home, including his having witnessed his father's murder by Islamic extremists.
Le père avait été assassiné justement par des moudjahidines ou des talibans plutôt par la suite et notamment parce qu'il avait espionné ces gens-là. Je pense qu'il ne serait pas très humain de l'obliger à retourner dans ce milieu hostile où il risque quand même sa vie.
I cannot go back to Afghanistan. I fear I'll probably be killed sooner or later because I cannot hide for the whole of my life.
But will he have a choice? After all his attempts to build a life here in Luxembourg and to be a model citizen, Akhter, after long months of deliberation, got his reply.
On a dit qu'il n'a pas réussi à démontrer qu'il craignait pour sa vie.
Akhter was turned down. Devastated, he and his lawyer appealed twice. To their shock, both appeals were also rejected.
Il est toujours là à dire, moi j'ai rien fait, moi je veux travailler, je veux étudier, je veux tout faire pour m'intégrer, et il ne comprend pas la réaction, pourquoi on ne lui donne pas cet asile politique.
With all appeals exhausted, Akhtar is now what is called an irregular migrant, with the threat of deportation at any time and no rights as a resident of the country, no right to work, to rent an apartment, or to be recognized as a citizen.
I don't have any status here. Like, I'm not living here illegally, but I don't have any permission to stay here, any authorization or any ID card.
Il faut gérer cette situation. Il faut au moins leur accorder la possibilité, pendant la période où ils peuvent rester dans le pays, de pouvoir travailler et organiser leur vie.
Luxembourg's Minister for Immigration, Nicolas Schmidt, says that the limbo many migrants find themselves in is troubling.
Il ne faut pas laisser les gens dans une zone, je dirais, gray zone, dans une zone grise où ils ne sont ni bénéficiaires du droit d'asile, ils ne sont pas renvoyés, mais ils n'ont aucun droit. Bon, c'est une situation intenable pour une personne.
Akhtar agrees. More than 4 years after first fleeing his home in Afghanistan, after traveling over 6,000 kilometers,
A Brescia, il ristorante bar Albergo Benedetta propone piatti di ottima qualità con un'ottima ristorazione. Lo staff del ristorante bar Albergo Benedetta è in grado di offrire con professionalità un servizio accogliente e dinamico per far diventare speciale ogni vostra occasione. Per informazioni o prenotazioni, chiama il numero 030 360 122. Venite a trovarci, diventeremo subito amici. Ristorante bar Albergo Benedetta, a Santa Eufemia a Brescia, in via Salerio 80. Ti aspettiamo!
Kenny on the loaf, Kenny on the loaf, Kenny on the loaf. I like it.
Available in all African and Chinese stores.
Bakery at Tito's Perry, 25018, Montichiari, Brazil, Italy.
Telephone 39030961000 or 390309664.
Always have it in your home. We like it.
Now my party dancing, make we go clubbing. It's true, one love, and my way me come, you go around me, straight to the night shift, happy making memory. I see this fine shorty from one corner, say she they feel me.
RTV Virgilio. Adesso su canale 819 Sky.